Welcome to the Building Doors Podcast, where we're not just pushing for opportunities for women's voices to be heard, we're creating them. I'm Christy Harst, voiceover actor and creator of the Building Doors campaign. Join us as we amplify voices, break barriers, and build doors together.
Welcome to the Building Doors LinkedIn Live for May. I'm your host, Marian Mills, and today we're diving into Behind the Voice, Mental Health Matters. I am thrilled to be joined with Monica Randle, voiceover actor from LA, licensed psychotherapist and founder of Mental Wealth Works. Her brother, Eddie Randle, dedicated journalist and storyteller, morning anchor at the NBC Connecticut, but his greatest accomplishment is his sobriety. And we have with us also veteran voice actor Dee Alvis from Florida, who's been heard in over 60 countries, voiced everything from animated series, video games. They'll be sharing their insights with us. We want to hear from you beyond the live. So call 216-307-1917 anytime during or after the event to leave a message, share your thoughts on discussion from today or the Building Doors campaign. Just really quick, I want to give a shout out to some of our supporters who recently bought us some coffee. Many thanks to William Nunn, Andrea Burke, and Kristen Mancada. If you love the Building Doors campaign, our live events, or our podcast, you can buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/buildingdoorsvo. Before we get started, I want to provide our listeners and our viewers with some resources since we are going to be tackling some sensitive and possibly triggering topics. So keep in mind that you can call, text, or chat #988 for the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, or you can visit their website at 988lifeline.org. Of course, I'm a veteran, so want to keep in mind for Veterans Crisis Line, you can dial 988 and press 1. You can chat online or text 838-255. And then, of course, in case of any emergencies, please keep in mind you can always dial 911. All right, so let's get started. Monica, I love the name of your company. Tell us what inspired the name of your organization, Mental Wealth Works.
Yes, thank you so much for asking. So I came up with the name of my company for 3 different reasons. And actually, I'll give credit to God for this, obviously, because I didn't come up with this on my own. Actually, so the first reason is it's biblically based, and it comes from Scripture, James 2:14-17, which is faith without works is dead. And the reason why that applies to mental health and therapy is that, in other words, if you can envision yourself changed or healed, then align your actions with that belief, right? You start putting your foot forward to make that happen. And so you make the efforts to make that a reality. So that's the first reason. Then the second one is based on logic. There must be movement to get anywhere. One step at a time, even small steps count. And then the third reason is that mental wealth really does work for you if you put in the work. And so I used to use the term work a lot when I worked with younger kids, like earlier in my career. And there was one child, she just was like, I guess it felt like school. So she was like, stop saying work. And I was like, I mean, you have to put in some effort, in other words. So,
that's right.
You know, that's what it's about. So yeah, those are the 3 reasons of how I came up with my name.
I love that. And I love the fact that it's biblically based. I love that. Thank you so much for sharing.
You're welcome.
Dee, in preparing for this panel, you shared with me briefly, you mentioned that you actually lost a loved one who had a mental health challenge and had some struggles. How did that impact your battle?
I mean, I've had a few, including actually one earlier this year. But yeah, when we were talking, it was about my older brother and my only brother. I just think it just shed a little more light on the fact that me personally, and I think this applies oftentimes culturally to men in general, but specifically men of color, it's often very taboo. It's always just suck it up. No one cares how you're feeling. Like it's, you know, your purpose is to just get the job done and, you know, with a smile on your face. And when times are tough for things like that, it's find a solution. And not to say that there isn't support, but I think that's a stigma that gets beat into us.
That's right.
Times from a young age, you know, boys don't cry kind of mentality and things like that. I know my brother just didn't believe in it, we had a lot of talks, and I was like, dude, I was the same way, but look what a mess I became. You have much to lose if you don't A, acknowledge this, and B, try to get a grip on it. But not something he wanted to hear, and eventually, it's a disease in its own right, and it got the better of him. So when we got that call, it was shocking but not surprising. That's the way I would describe it. Like for me, it was more about being there for my mom and being supportive for her. And again, which is kind of ironic because I'm like, okay, here's another time where I told myself, put your feelings aside and be the strong one for others. And, now in that situation, I felt that was the right thing to do. I think stigma or not, that would have been the way I would have handled it. But it's just one of those things where, I get involved with a lot of groups and things like that where I spend a lot of late nights talking to folks, going through some stuff.
Yeah.
That's just something I've devoted myself to the last, basically since the pandemic.
Okay. And
because I feel like that escalated it quite a bit. If you look at the stats, suicide rate in the States was skyrocketing from 2020 on. And the largest demographic were men ages, 25 to 50. So not something most people would have expected. But yes, you just try to do what you can while juggling your own demons and hopefully do something positive and keep other people from drowning in what they're going through.
Wow. I appreciate that. And I love the way that you shared and acknowledged that, you're dealing with your own stuff. So many people actually deal with that. So, trying to actually figure out the best way to actually help yourself, but at the same time, not be selfish and actually help someone else. So
you can't pour out of an empty cup is what
that's
it comes
right.
down to. There's some times where I just don't have it in me and I have to put those, boundaries in and say, look, guys, I promise I'll be there for you next time. But tonight I can't, you know what I mean? Because otherwise I'm not doing myself a service. I'm not doing them a service. No different than with your clients. If you're not at your best, you don't want to, give them a half-assed effort. Especially with something this important where it can be life or death.
Definitely. Cheryl, I appreciate it. She said that she's so sorry to hear about your loss. And she said she's basically saying that you didn't have an outlet to process your feelings at the time. So, that's definitely a good point. But I appreciate you for pointing out that you can't pour from an empty cup. I think a lot of times we're trying to give. And sometimes you have to be selfish to protect your own mental health.
Right. Because oftentimes I think it's that mask, right?
Yes.
How many times have you heard about somebody, taking their own life and you hear people saying, oh, they were so happy. I would have never known. And, oh, if only I knew something was wrong. It's like, because when you're feeling that way, one of the best things, or I shouldn't say best things, one of the things we're best at, we're at our most, I think, is putting on that mask.
Yeah.
I mean,
having a smile. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe that's why I got into acting. I don't know, because I was able to fool a lot of people for a lot of years.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And Eddie, you stated that you realized during your recovery how mental health and sobriety actually went hand in hand. Can you share your journey and the importance of taking care of yourself physically, mentally, and emotionally?
Yes. And first of all, I just want to say, Marian, thank you for having me. And a shout out to Dee. I loved hearing your story, and to my sister, Monica, as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Monica's one of my biggest inspirations. And a bit of my story, I developed an addiction with drugs and alcohol pretty early on in high school. Alcohol, drugs came into the picture later on in college, and stayed until my early 30s until I got sober. But my first addiction was neither drugs nor alcohol. My first addiction was food. And I grew up constantly being overweight. I was the one in my family that was always overweight. At my heaviest, when I got into college at 23, I was 430 pounds. And I had gastric bypass because I had several health reasons. Okay. And after losing the weight, a year and a half, 2 years later, I felt better. I felt that I can do all this stuff. And then, I was dating, I was doing a lot of different things. And then, of course, already being having a heavy addiction with drugs and alcohol, it just kind of went out of control. Yeah. And I just started doing a lot of partying. Things just went haywire, for, lack of a better term. And it took several different situations for me to finally decide that I really had a problem and say that I had a problem. And there were a lot of people who told me I had a problem, but I wasn't willing to listen to them. And at one point I finally did at the age of 33, and I stepped into a 12-step program, also with the help of a therapist. And when I got sober, even though I had gotten sober maybe 7-8 years after gastric bypass and losing the weight, I started to really realize that the reason I drank and I used drugs and alcohol were the same reasons that I overate. And it all stemmed from childhood and the neglect that I showed to that inner child. And I had to really hone in and figure out who Eddie is. And once I saw the root of my problems really was me, and a lot of the things that I was going through as a child that I just decided to throw away and not really address, I really started to find myself. And I started to realize that, as I'm getting recovered, as I'm going through recovery, I'm working on myself and my mental health as well. And I would have never said that I had, a mental health issue or any type of problem, or there was anything wrong on that side, but it definitely was. And getting sober has opened the doors for me to really explore how I can get better and how I can be not only healthier physically, but healthier and stronger mentally. And it's a process. It's a process, and there's progress every single day. But, Monica even mentioned it, and so did Dee. You have to work through that. You have to continue to put in the work. And so that's what I tell myself every single day, is that I have to work every day at staying sober, but I have to also work every day of understanding who Eddie is, who Eddie was, so that I can be a better Eddie presently and hopefully in the future. But it all works hand in hand. Like, if my mental health is not together, then everything else is going to start to, flounder, is going to start to fall. My professional life, my love life, all of those things are not going to work well if Eddie is not well. And I love what Dee said about, not being able to pour into someone if your glass is half full. Absolutely. And it's so important to focus on yourself and to make sure. It sounds selfish, but you really do have to focus on yourself before you can really be any use to anyone else.
Yeah. Thank you so much. As you said, as everyone on the panel has actually stated, but the scenario that you just gave is just like they say on the airplane. You need to make sure that you mask yourself first before, because you can't help someone else if you can't breathe. It shows that everyone has a story. Let me actually get caught up on some of the comments. A lot of people just saying hello, congratulations, and just basically thanking the panelists for their bravery and opening up. Thank you so much, Kevra. I appreciate your support. This is a comment from Terry Briscoe. He actually said, hopefully we can suck up the days of suck it up and burying your feelings behind us, at least headed in the right direction. And I definitely agree with that. That's what I love so much about this panel, why I'm so passionate about mental health for my own personal reasons. And as I actually stated, the panel is so passionate about mental health as well. So that actually starts the conversation, and it starts with just that. And I appreciate Michelle's comment. She actually stated, she said, no joke, being able to talk to myself in a padded room as a voice actor has been so helpful to her mental and emotional health. So and it's whatever people, whatever you find, it works for you.
I love that, because that's honestly something I do from time to time, where, some days you just, want to scream at the sky or whatever. And as voice actors, we have this equipment where we can go into our actual padded rooms, and I can unleash my stress vocally, and not bother my wife or anyone else. Because they can't, it's just kind of a weird thing, but it's been therapeutic, where I'm like, you know what? I have this box that's padded that keeps the sound out.
That's it.
Rather than, sometimes it's something as dumb as, my sports team lost, like Jason Tatum, a Celtics fan, blew out his Achilles game 4 the other night. And I was bummed. And then I'm sitting there like, why do I feel bad? I'm just a dude on the couch. But then I'm like, well, I feel bad for this young man. I feel bad for my team. And then I came into my little padded room, and I was like effing bombing left and right. It sounds dumb, but try it sometime, voice actors. It's very helpful.
No, I appreciate that, Dee. You actually started in on the next question that I had for you, and that is, how do you make? No, you don't have to apologize. Like I said, I want this to be an interactive conversation, so you just flowed right into it. How do you maintain your own mental health on a daily basis?
Yeah, I think it's work is very always been. I'm one of those people when something bad happens, I like to throw myself into the work. It helps when it's busier. And some voice actors know some days are slower than others. And, but it's mainly trying to focus on something positive. You know what I mean? I think that's the hardest thing, obviously, because we're emotional creatures. We're dealing with, especially this day and age, we've been programmed to be very reactionary. I think as social media evolved, and news media and everything, it's like there's a lot. We're being bombarded with negativity.
Yes.
More times than we can process. I mean, it's literally got to be 1,000 times a day if you're active, you know what I mean, on your phone and things like that. Yeah. So, which I think in business, a lot of times you have to be, right? We're always social media marketing. We use LinkedIn, we use Instagram, we use whatever. All the different avenues that we're going down, there's going to be negative stuff thrown at us constantly, like an episode of American Gladiators, The Gauntlet or something. And it just, you gotta sometimes just tune it out. And even though, the best way is to just turn it off, right? But then you're kind of letting it win. So for me, it's I always talk about PMA, positive mental attitude. And, which by the way, you should check out the book. It's a very useful tool. At least it was for me. It really comes down to, analyzing the situation. This bad thing happened, or I'm reacting badly to this thing. And I stop and I say, now, is that going to ruin the other, 23 plus hours of the day?
Yeah.
Or focus on some other things, like go hang out with my dog. Go step outside and be like, oh, I live in beautiful Tampa Bay where the sun's always shining. Soak up some vitamin D, which is also good for the, the mental health.
That's right.
Or, just take a break to maybe go. That might be the time when something's really getting to me. I'm like, okay, now it's time for exercise. Because I feel that's important. I feel it's a good idea to devote at least a little bit of time each day to serving your body. And that helps with a lot too. It's a lot of stress relief. It's good for the mind. Gets the blood flowing, and just try to focus on, instead of what I don't have, what I do have. Not in the point in my career I'd like to be. I'm not as tall as I hope to be, but that's never going to change. Like certain things, and it's a lot of what we discussed earlier with childhood. It's a lot of that goes back to childhood trauma and things like that, and you can't go back in time and fix that. But like I mentioned, my mother and I are very close, but there was a time when we weren't. As our relationship grew, from my adulthood, we fixed a lot of that because she was very open about her flaws, and I'd be open about mine, and all the other stuff that's going on. My father was very abusive, to her, which affected the family naturally. And, immigrating from the third world and coming to America, that's a lot of stress as it is. We came from Sri Lanka during the Civil War, and then it's like, and then I have the disability, so I'm kind of a burden, right? So it's kind of like, I don't know, it's like our family got here in 1983, and then there was a lot of odds stacked against us.
Right.
I realized that it took me a long time to figure this out. Therapy helped too. I thought I was the biggest hindrance to the whole family. That's why daddy was mad. And that's why mommy cried. And that's, there was a lot of guilt I felt where like I was the catalyst of all the bad things in our life. Which is not something a child should feel, but it's, and I'm not saying anybody put that on me, but it's the way
that's
it. Yeah.
No, that's good. So a couple of questions and comments. Veronica, I really appreciate your comment. She says that she didn't know anything about mental health growing up as a kid. And she's so glad that it's being talked about now, which is so true. A lot of times I've heard adults actually say that they don't understand how a kid can be depressed, have anxiety, or have PTSD. So yeah, that's so good. I'm definitely glad that the conversation is open and more available. Kat Peterson said mental health looks so different for so many different people. And she said that she's so glad to hear how others are finding what works. And that again, going back to the name of your company, Monica, that word works, putting in the work and actually finding what works for you. It's definitely not cookie cutter. Eddie, I have a question for you. That someone actually put in the chat. What are specific things or routine that you actually do every day to keep yourself on track?
When it comes to my mental health, I link that with my physical health. I spin a lot. So I go to a spin class probably 4 times a week. I also used to be a spin instructor when I was in Wichita, Kansas, a few years ago, or a few months ago, for a few years. But when it comes to my addiction, that it really goes hand in hand with my food addiction and keeping my health together, and my addiction to drugs and alcohol. I work a 12-step program. I've been sober now for a little over 6 years. My sobriety date is November 3rd, 2018.
Yes.
And the 12-step program is really what helps me. I know that I have to keep doing it. I have to keep going. I do that probably 3 or 4 times a week too, but it goes back hand in hand. Thank you to what has already been shared by both Dee and Monica, is that the process works when you work it. Yeah. And that is one of those cliche sayings from my 12-step program. It works if you work it. Yeah. And it sounded crazy to me when I first stepped into those rooms, but now it's something that I live by, and I try to say to myself every single day, I know that is something that I absolutely have to do in order to stay on track, because I never want to go back. I can see right now so clearly what my life was like prior to sobriety and prior to losing the weight. I don't want to get back there, and I don't regret my past, nor am I going to shut the door on it. But I know that I'm going to use my past to make sure that I don't make those same mistakes that I made back then.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Absolutely. That's awesome. I appreciate that. So we have a great question from Terry. Thank you so much for asking this question. And this question is for everyone. What are some telltale signs for you to let you know that it's time to take a step back and focus on your mental health instead of trying to plow through it all? That's a great question. Thank you so much for that, Terry. Monica, I'll start with you.
Well, yeah. So personally, I pay attention, and I tell my clients the same thing. Pay attention to your body, physical signs. For me, usually I carry the stress in my shoulders and neck. And so I noticed this last time that I guess I felt overwhelmed and there was some anxiety going on. I was like, some people will ignore it. I'm very intentional. I pay attention, I think not only because I'm a therapist, but just being informed. And so I went to see a masseuse, and knocked it right out. And I was just like, so I started telling everybody, I was like, go see us. I think his name was Scott. I was like, go see Scott. I was like, he's gonna get you right. And yeah. Or even just like Dee was saying earlier about exercise, going for a walk and things like that to help release, for those of us who live by the water. So grateful for that. That helps to release too, to just be out in that open air and open water. But yeah, I would say pay attention to physical and emotional signs, your mood and things like that.
Definitely. I appreciate that. Dee, what about you?
So that was the hardest thing, was because I think it was like where it really got to the point where I was like, I need to do something about this, is where the depression, all the other negative stuff turned to anger.
Yeah.
And I found myself like lashing out at the people who cared about me most, which is a dangerous thing, because like what Eddie was saying about, it's not so much about wanting to disown the past version of yourself and keep that present so you don't make those same mistakes.
Yes.
And also honor that person, because that person, they may not have reacted in the best way, but their feelings were valid. Yeah. And, it's not that we didn't necessarily process it the way maybe we should have. So I found myself doing that a lot, where I'm like, it wasn't my boss who pissed me. You know what I mean? Like, because probably I was like, well, I can't yell at him because I'll get fired.
That's right.
So instead it's my girlfriend, or it's my mom, or it's my best friend, or it's this. And so it's like, and then I found myself just being like, are you just trying to destroy everything, every good relationship you have? And then I realized I was. And then there was a couple of attempts throughout the years where I didn't even take those as seriously, because I thought that was just more like, oh yeah, I was just in a mood, like had a bad day. So attempted something very dangerous that could have ended my life. And it was basically friends and family being like, dude, you need help. You need to get a grip on this stuff. It's only going to get worse. And then, Lord knows what's going to happen and how you're going to react the next time something gets you in that space. And, therapy and meds, and also just really becoming more self-aware about it. And it's a process. It's a lot of work. And that's why a lot of people I know, like my brother, I think he knew in his heart of hearts that like there was validity to it, but it's like he didn't want to bother with the process, I guess. It was too much work, too much commitment. And so, which really, guys, if it's important, which it should be, it's not that much commitment. I mean, you just a couple minutes a day just to do it, do whatever you got to do to get yourself right. Just there's plenty of time each day. So just carve out that time, lots of resources like we've been sharing here. So I would encourage that, because rather than wait till you have the episode that could be, there's the point of no return.
Yeah.
Get ahead of it.
No, I appreciate that word, self-aware. And I think it takes therapy to actually be self-aware. As you were talking about, Monica, the tension sometimes that we carry, we'll make an excuse for it or just ignore it. Or Dee, is some of the examples that you were giving when we're snapping on someone else. When we're snapping on someone, sometimes we just don't take especially when we haven't actually been able to deal with whatever the baseline and whatever that issue is. A lot of times we don't take accountability for our own actions and being honest with ourselves, but that self-awareness actually helps. I wanted to thank Terry Clary. She said, nature is the most powerful healer, and I believe that. I definitely agree with that. Eddie, if you could actually answer the same question, what do you do to actually, tap into that every single day to actually maintain your mental health?
Yeah, it's very similar to what was shared by Dee and Monica. I mean, one of the things that I've noticed is that I don't think I ever really have had a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I have a 1, a 2, and a 10. Right. Yeah. Like the numbers in between just don't happen.
That's right.
And it just, I'll lash out really quick, and everyone's like, where did that come from? Like it went from literally 0 to 10 so quickly. But what I have learned is the power of conversation and the power of just talking. I bottle so much stuff up, which we all do. Now that I know through therapy and through my 12-step program that I can have an outlet. There's another alcoholic that I can talk to. There's another loved one that I can talk to. I call my sister, Monica and I talk every single day. And awesome. There's so much power in just being able to talk. And even when I talk to my friends, once you have a conversation and you're feeling like really anxious or upset about something, all the time after these conversations, either I say it or I hear, I feel so much better just with that 5-minute conversation, because you're releasing it. You're letting it out. You're not letting it fester. And that's what I would do for so long, is just let everything build up. Situation 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, to the point where now I'm lashing out at one individual, but they're getting everything that I've been holding in for the last, several days. So I think it's that power. Yeah. Power of conversation, power of talking just goes so far.
Eddie, thank you so much for saying that. That has been my prayer for this live event. And that is just talking. Talking is very therapeutic. Even sometimes if you talk to your dog, if you talk to, like you said, a friend, even if they don't understand it, as long as there's no judgment and no stigma in the person that, with the person that you're talking to, it's extremely therapeutic just to get it out. So I really appreciate that. So Monica, in the talks of mental health and everyone's work looking completely different, let me ask you a question about you shedding some light. Is there a difference in the symptoms and treatment in certain mental health disorders for men and women, or no?
Symptoms can show up differently, sure, for men and women, but based on the individual too, I would say. Okay. There's also a difference in what's socially acceptable or tolerated as it relates to men and women. So we know historically, I would say people would probably judge a man for probably crying, and probably still do that. Yeah. However, what I've seen, and I'm so happy to see, is some of my male clients and male clients of color, especially, they're crying more than the women. And I'm just like, let it out. Let it out. Exactly. Let it out. And it's a safe space to do that, because when they're not in that space, they may feel like they need to be strong for the family. And so when they get, I promise you, intake session, first session, I'm like, it's powerful. I mean, just letting it out. And so there also might be like social pressures that one gender experiences more than the other.
Okay.
Then there's the underlying issues or barriers that could be different for the individual. So the DSM criteria that I would point out, which is the manual that we use to diagnose, doesn't differentiate between male and female. So if you meet the criteria, you meet the criteria.
Okay.
And so it's up to us as providers to be able to pick out, what symptoms might be masked, or to find out what's really going on there. So there could be differences though with children and adults. Oftentimes, like when it comes to depression in adults, it could look like isolation or sadness. In children, it could look more like anger, agitation. But then I'll say too, to contradict that, you will see anger and agitation in adults sometimes.
Yes.
So it really just depends on the individual and the environment that they're into. So, because if you see, their family reacts in that way, being angry, then you'll see that, come out in that person. Also, I have some research when it comes to Black men specifically, and how depression may show up just because of all of the historical barriers that have been there, and also current barriers. But that, I didn't bring that up just because, this is more general and for everyone.
Yeah.
And so the other part of your question is the treatment different? So I would say yes. And the treatment is going to be different for everyone, not just because they're male and they're female. Everybody's coming in with different barriers. Everybody's coming in with different environmental factors, internal factors, medical conditions, things that are impacting their mental health. So the therapy should be tailored to that, and it should look different for everyone. The treatment plan should look different.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate that, especially when you're talking about something being tailored to an individual. Again, it's not cookie cutter, and it never should be. So thank you so much for that. A lot of people, just wanted to let you guys know, a lot of people in the chat are saying, congratulations, Eddie, on your sobriety and putting in the work, as well as just thanking everyone on the panel for sharing and being so vulnerable. So thank you so much. Just wanted to let you guys know that. I got to preach. Someone was saying preach. Not really sure exactly. Maybe I think that was when Eddie or Dee was talking. And again, just thanking the panelists for being so vulnerable. Sometimes just feeling heard means the world. Yeah, definitely. That is so true. Dee, what advice would you give to someone who's thinking about getting help, but struggling with the stigma around mental health?
I say just do it, because the other thing too, I think these days, because you have the telehealth and things like that, right?
Yeah. Definitely.
You can, and I'm not saying you need to hide it, but if that helps you initially, because I think once you take that first step, you'll start to feel better. And then again, the right therapist will help give you the tools to navigate those waters, and so, if you feel like you need to keep it on the DL, then there's ways you can do that. But as much as it sucks, because it's scary, I think that's the thing, right? Like, at the end of the day, you can't worry about what somebody else is going to think about you. It's because this is about you saving yourself. And honestly, if you're healthier, you're happier, you're more comfortable in your own skin, that's going to positively affect the people around you. I know, like, this is something where, like, my wife, God bless her, because she Lord knows what she's put up with. Because I was like, moving to Florida was a huge thing for us, again, with the Mother Nature thing, looks like that, leaving Baltimore, the concrete jungle for, alligators and stuff. But it was, again, that was part of the thing, was like for mental health reasons and physical health reasons. But then the pandemic hit, and I was kind of like, in hindsight, it's easier for me to analyze it now. But like for her, I can't imagine how horrifying it must have been, because it's like she saw me devolving. Like I come so far, and then I was just like, right back in that place. And look, she encouraged me to get back into therapy and doing all those other things. But like, if you're feeling like you're ashamed, don't feel ashamed. It's so different than if you broke your foot. You wouldn't be like, I'm not going to the doctor. You know what I mean?
Right.
You go get help. Like, this is important. That's why it's mental health. This is not like, this ain't, again, we got to erase these stigmas. And I think we've come a long way in this country and hopefully worldwide in recent years, but we still got a lot of work to do. Anybody that's going to sour you on getting better is probably not somebody you need in your life. And that's part of the thing for my journey was like, I had to cut a lot of toxic people out of my life. And that included family members. That included people I loved, people I've known for most of my life that, people that was like brothers and sisters to me. But, sometimes it's like those other things weighing you down. And if something isn't uplifting you, life's too short, and especially if you're an adult and you've got all these other responsibilities, you got to worry about putting food on the table and keeping the lights on, especially in trying times like what we got going on right now for a lot of folks. Don't let the haters keep you from accomplishing your goals. It's like anything else. So don't be embarrassed. There's nothing to be embarrassed about because, again, it is a medical thing.
Absolutely. Yeah. Cheryl just chimed back in to let everyone know that she said preach just because of all the truth bombs that were being shared. So that was basically
sounds about right. Yeah. Thank you, Cheryl.
Yeah. So Terry asked an important question. He's asking and made a statement saying the suicide rate is high amongst veterans. Marian, as a veteran yourself, who has faced some of these issues and gotten help, why do you think that there are so many other veterans who have not made use of the resources available? And thank you so much, Terry, for that question. It's definitely a necessary question. And just, again, having that conversation. But simply put, it's the stigma. It is the culture of the military that, going back to what everyone has shared, being strong. And a lot of times, even for me as a social worker, I never shared my mental health because, again, the stigma that's around, how is someone that's in the helping field going to help someone else if they're struggling with, their own mental health? It is. It's just the stigma, and that's why mental health is so important to me. And I want to create an environment where just talking about it is normal. It's normalized. As you said, Dee, mental health is just like your physical health. It's a part of health. Sometimes it can be healthy and sometimes it's not healthy. And you have to find whatever that balance is to make sure that you actually have what you need. But that's why I am such an advocate for veterans getting the help that they need, because it is sad to lose people to such a disease when there is help available. So getting rid of the stigma, I think, is one of the first things that's most helpful for that. Eddie, what advice would you give someone who's struggled with addiction for so long that they don't think that they will ever get sober?
I feel like if someone, because I can only speak for myself, but for me, I realized I had a problem. I knew that I wanted some help. I didn't really know how to ask for that help, but I knew that I needed to seek it, and that deep down, even if I wasn't ready to admit that I had an issue, I knew that there was an issue, because I'm sitting here thinking like, why am I drinking every day? Why am I doing this? Why are these decisions that I'm making? And I would just go back and stress what Dee just said about saving yourself. Like, you want to save yourself. And when you look at that, like, where are you going to be tomorrow? Are you even going to get through today? Like, if this is what you're thinking of, take some action in that. Just work to take some action in that and look for those resources out there. Before I found a 12-step program, it was suggested to me by my therapist, and I had, seek therapy. And my therapist has also worked another 12-step program and was able to tell me, you can go and get help here. And it's the work of that 12-step program along with therapy that has really helped. It goes hand in hand. I mean, that saying, it takes a village to raise a child. I always reiterate that and switch it up and say it takes a village to raise an Eddie, because I really do need a lot of help, and I've been able to receive that help. I'm blessed enough to have a sibling who has a background in professional mental health help. And so I've been able just to talk to her and see that those resources are available. But it goes back to just that conversation, being able to talk about it. Like, once you can admit it to yourself, be willing to take one more step and admit it out loud to someone else. And those resources are out there.
Yeah. Being able to say it out loud, I believe, is very healing.
Mhm.
Extremely healing. Again, just talking about going back to just opening up the conversation and actually talking. Again, so many people are just making comments about. I believe this was in conjunction to asking the question about why a lot of people don't use different resources. But Rebecca said, my thought is you would want a person to love and accept you or seek help to start that healing. And you yourself are worthy of that same love, and you deserve that. But yeah, I definitely agree with that. Even though I chopped up the question, but basically that's so true. A lot of times it's like preaching to the choir. We can actually give help to someone else, but sometimes we don't even seek that help for ourselves. But yeah, it's like we're very deserving of that help. And Cheryl just basically said that it's related to pain and struggle. And again, that's something that's difficult to talk about and for people to share. So yeah, definitely, I agree with that as well.
Yeah, I didn't know that those things were related for the longest time, because dealing with a physical condition, I figured like, well, maybe God spared me from the mental health aspect. Like, no, they go hand in hand a lot of times. So
we definitely do. Yeah. Monica, I guess just one last question before we actually end. What is some of the biggest misconceptions for when it comes to mental health that you found in your practice? For your patients as well as maybe their support systems.
Yeah, I would say like some of the biggest misconceptions will be like some individuals or communities still struggle with mental health even being a thing, and then you add therapy to that, and they're completely lost to like what. And so, but I think what I'm seeing is, which I'm again so grateful for, is like people realizing how important it is. The education is there. They're learning about how therapy can be beneficial. And so buying into it more. And so some people new to therapy that I see are still struggling a bit with like what therapy should look like and who could benefit from therapy. There's some clients that will show up, to therapy, and they'll sit there and look at me like, what's the next question? And I'm like, we're having a conversation here. So, and I don't know you. So it's not like I have abracadabra magical answers to give. Yeah. But so just kind of working through what that could look like for that individual, what they want to get out of it. I had a friend who will remain nameless, but said we were talking about therapy, and she was recommending therapy for someone else. And then she was just like, "Yeah, I don't need it." And I was just like, she said, "I'm not perfect, but I don't need it." And so I would argue that because you're not perfect, because we're none of us are, right, that you may not, quote unquote, need it to continue on with life, but we've all used some sort of therapeutic experience to get through life. And I would say therapy could be beneficial for anybody. There's always something that can be dug up, something that, you're not even aware of, that's maybe the foundation of what's going on with you, like the behaviors that you have, the way that you think, your mindset. Yeah. So I would say anybody could benefit it. And I would say, I think it helps to look at therapy as a conversation between two people who are collaborating on how to move the needle forward. And even if it's just a little bit. So we're processing, we're exploring, we're identifying resources, whatever those look like for you, because everybody doesn't have the same resources, but we're learning about ourselves on a deeper level. And so again, the word is work, but I would say intentionality as well, being intentional about what you want life to look like, what you want to feel like, and then moving towards that.
I love that. Thank you so much. So we're at our time. I have thoroughly enjoyed this. A huge thank to my panelists for sharing your time, your personal stories, and your expertise today. On behalf of Building Doors, we truly appreciate you. And a big shout out to our listeners and for supporting Building Doors and for being so engaged in this live event today. It has meant the world to me, as I stated, being so passionate about mental health and just having this conversation. My prayer was that this conversation encourages at least one person and to actually seek help. Again, I just want to give out some helpful resources. Call, text, or chat, #988. 988 Suicide Crisis Lifeline, or you can visit their website for a few more resources at 988lifeline.org. For the Crisis Veterans line, you can dial 988 and press 1. Chat online or text 838-255. And of course, in case of emergencies that this may have triggered anything in someone, please dial 911 in case of an emergency. Again, if you want to support the campaign, you can buy us a cup of coffee. Go to buyacoffee.com/buildingdoors.vo to donate. Thanks to all of our recent supporters, Andrea Burke, Kristen Moncada, and William Nunn. And remember, we'd love to keep the conversation going, so call 216-307-1917. Anytime you can leave us a short message about your thoughts about today's discussion or the Building Doors campaign. And of course, don't miss the next live event with Tina Zaremba. Her topic is starving artist mentality. And that'll be on May 28th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time on Instagram. Thank you so much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you, guys.
Thanks for listening to the Building Doors podcast. Want to hear more? Check out all our episodes at buildingdoorsvo.com/podcast and follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn at Building Doors VO. We'd love to hear from you, so call us on our 24/7 hotline at 216-307-1917 and leave us a voicemail with your thoughts. Do you want to support the podcast? Well, we love coffee. Buy us a cup through the link in the description or at buildingdoorsvo.com. Until next time, keep pushing forward, keep speaking up, and let's keep building doors together.